Today, we know many details of the human body that were not known to the ancient Greeks and Romans. We have developed detailed illustrations and three-dimensional models obtained through the use of radiologic, magnetic resonance, ultrasound, photoacoustic, thermographic, and tomographic imaging. The ancients did not have these resources available to them. To the ancients, the fluids of the body were more important than the bones and organs. In fact, the ancients believed that the solid structures of the human body were merely vessels that carried the all-important fluids from one part of the body to another. Variations of this view dominated medicine until the 18th century. Human dissection, or the cutting up of the human body for study, was not allowed in ancient times, except for a brief period during the 3rd century BC in Alexandria. This does not mean that the ancients were completely ignorant of the internals of the human body. The insides of animals were well known to the ancients due to the cutting up of animals during ritual sacrifice and butchery. Dissection of animals for study was also allowed during ancient times. Another way that early physicians were able to learn about the internal workings of the human body was by examining wounds obtained during accidents or in battle. Because of their limited understandings of the workings of the human body, the ancients attributed illness to individual punishments being administered by the gods for a particular individual's wrongdoings. However, this could not account for contagious diseases, which could affect large groups of people in a particular region or a particular environment. In order to explain this, the ancients reasoned that diseases were almost sentient creations of the gods that were allowed to wander the earth and afflict spontaneously rather than by a direct command of a god to inflict an individual. The ancient Greeks and Romans believed that not only were illnesses and diseases caused by gods, but that they also could be cured by gods. Worshippers who believed they had been healed by an affliction created images or objects representing the afflicted part of their body, along with an inscription detailing how the god had helped them recover from the illness. The most famous god of healing was Asclepius. Asclepius was son of Apollo. The famous medical oath known as the Hippocratic Oath, historically sworn by all physicians, opens with, "I swear by Apollo the doctor, and Asclepius, and the goddesses health and all heal, and all the gods and goddesses." Temples to Asclepius flourished all over the ancient Mediterranean, even into the Christian era. At these temples, patients made offerings to Asclepius in hopes of a cure or in thanks for having received one. The most famous temple of Asclepius was set up in the 6th century BC at Epidurus. There were also 2 sanctuaries in Athens, one establishing a cult of a god in a new location. It was commonplace to bring an object from an existing sanctuary to the new sanctuary to establish the presence of the god. When the cult was introduced to Athens in the 5th century BC, the famous snakes of Asclepius were brought to fulfill this requirement. When the cult was set up in Rome in the 3rd century BC, it was once again the snakes that were brought from the old location to the new. The snakes became a symbol of Asclepius and healing because of its ability to shed its skin. This was seen to be a sign of renewal or rebirth. Some ancients believed that through this rebirth, snakes were immortal. Some accounts of healings at the temple of Asclepius involve snakes licking an affected part of a patient's body, thereby bringing healing to the patient. The symbol of Asclepius, a serpent entwined about a staff, is still used today as a symbol for the medical profession. Hippocrates lived during the 5th and 4th centuries BC. He was a Greek physician and is considered one of the most outstanding figures in the history of medicine. He is referred to as the father of the Western medicine. The Hippocratic Corpus is a collection of around 60 ancient Greek medical works, which are attributed to Hippocrates or his followers who used similar techniques. We are able to learn about the Hippocratic Corpus because it was so highly regarded that it was copied and recopied down through the ages. The Hippocratic corpus in Hippocratic medicine is also significant because it marked the beginnings of a change in how people thought about illness. Instead of looking to the gods as the sole cause and cure of illness, physicians began to believe that illness could also be due to external factors, such as location, environment, diet, gender, or class. Although physicians still did not have the ability to observe what was occurring internally in a patient, it was at this time they began to explore these external factors to try to develop patterns that could help them diagnose what illness was affecting a patient internally. They began to record these patterns along with which of their attempted cures worked and which did not. The exploration and recording of these patterns documents the beginnings of the use of the scientific method in medicine. The proliferation and exchange of these texts represents a great advancement in medicine of the day. The Hippocratic corpus also provided advice on how practitioners of medicine should behave. The Hippocratic texts recognized that gaining the trust of the patient and his family was critical in order to have a patient seek the physician's help and to increase the likelihood of a successful outcome. Doctors are advised by the Hippocratic text to gain the trust of a patient and his family by having a healthy appearance, a cheerful and gentle manner, by avoiding extravagant clothes, and by not discussing payment when at the patient's bedside. In a time when physicians were still in competition with priests and magicians, even the act of swearing the Hippocratic oath was at least in part performed in order to bolster the patient's confidence that the oath-taker was more qualified and committed to a cure than the more common priest or magician who wouldn't have sworn such an oath. The city of Alexandria was founded by Alexander the Great in 311 BC. The wealthy ruling class in Alexandria wanted it to become a center of Greek culture. They invested heavily in patronage of the arts and sciences. Alexandria became known for a strong interest in the natural world. Because of this, Alexandria became the most important medical center in the ancient world. It maintained this reputation even after the fall of the Roman Empire in 476 AD. After the emergence of Hippocrates, medical healing techniques became divided into three major branches: diet, drugs, and surgery. The use of these techniques were not of equal importance, but an ancient doctor was expected to be able to use all three. Diet was to be the first line of action. If diet did not produce the desired outcome, then drugs could be considered. Although a reluctance to use drugs existed because the physicians of the time believed that the use of drugs could cut short the normal lifespan of a disease, opening up the patient to a more serious disease. Surgery was to be used only as a last resort if diet and drugs failed to produce a cure. In fact, early versions of the Hippocratic Oath specifically forbade cutting. However, later versions removed this restriction. Archaeologists have found many ancient Greek and Roman surgical tools. Many of these tools would be recognized by modern physicians without any explanation required. When we examine the history of medicine in the ancient Greek-speaking world, we can see similarities to both the philosophies and techniques of medicine in the modern world. We share a belief with the ancients that some of our illnesses and diseases can be attributed to things internal to our body like malfunctioning organs or inherited defects, while others can be attributed to external forces like environment, diet, germs, or viruses. Our tools for research and our techniques for looking inside the body and the mind have most definitely advanced since ancient times, which of course has provided us the ability to recognize and correct many of the mistakes in thinking that were made by the ancient physicians. However, we must be careful not to become so confident in our modern abilities that we fail to admit that we still don't know everything there is to know about the human body and mind, and that there is still much to be learned.